This isn't just a story. It's a journey, one that'll stay with you long after the video ends. So if you've ever felt love, loss, betrayal, or hope, then stay with us. Because this story deserves to be heard from the very first second to the very last. If this video moves you, even for a moment, please give it a like. Leave a comment telling us which part hit you the hardest, and share it with someone who needs to feel something real today. And if you love stories that are raw, emotional, and unforgettable, then subscribe to the channel. Because we don't just tell stories here, we bring them to life. Emily Taylor never imagined that her life would get tangled in a fabricated romance. As an ordinary secretary, she was used to long, hectic days working for Nathan Harrington, the cold and ruthless CEO of Harrington Enterprises, a man who didn't believe in love. Everything changed when Nathan's family started pressuring him into marrying Samantha Blake, the daughter of an influential family. Samantha adored Nathan, but he had never once reciprocated her feelings. He refused to let himself be tied down by a marriage he didn't want. One morning at the office, Nathan made Emily an offer that left her speechless: pretend to be his girlfriend for 3 months. At first, she flat out refused. The idea of faking a relationship with her boss sounded utterly ridiculous. But then Nathan named his price, a sum so large it could solve all of her financial troubles and help her family. Emily hesitated. The logical part of her mind screamed at her to refuse. This was reckless, absurd. But then she thought of her family, of the financial burden weighing her down. Could she really afford to walk away from this? With a deep sigh, she finally met Nathan's gaze and nodded. After all, it was just a contract, wasn't it? A game. A role she had to play for 3 months. What she didn't know was that this simple arrangement would change her life forever. 3 days later, Emily stood still in front of the grand mirror in a luxurious dressing room of a 5-star hotel, her fingers gripping the soft fabric of her gown. The navy blue evening dress hugged her figure perfectly, exuding elegance, yet making her feel strangely out of place. She had never worn something so lavish before. Her hair was pulled into a graceful updo, with a few delicate curls framing her face, adding to her gentle features. But no matter how much she adjusted her posture, she couldn't shake the unease pooling in her stomach. "It's just a role," Emily reminded herself, taking a deep breath to steady her nerves. A knock on the door pulled her out of her thoughts. She turned, only to find Nathan Harrington standing at the doorway, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit. He looked every bit as powerful and commanding as always. His sharp gaze swept over her, lingering for a brief moment before flickering with something unspoken: approval. But just as quickly, it vanished. "Not bad," he remarked coolly. Emily folded her arms, raising a brow. "Is that a compliment or just an evaluation?" Nathan smirked, but didn't respond. Instead, he extended his hand. "Let's go." The evening gala was held at the Harrington estate, a dazzling mansion illuminated by golden chandeliers, filled with business moguls, politicians, and the elite. As soon as Nathan and Emily stepped inside, all eyes turned toward them. A wave of hushed whispers spread through the room. "Who is she? Nathan never brings a date." The scrutinizing stares felt like a spotlight burning into Emily's skin, but she kept a poised smile. This was just a contract, just a role she had to play for 3 months. Yet no matter how much she reassured herself, an unsettling feeling gnawed at her, especially when her eyes landed on a woman standing across the room, staring at them intently. Samantha Blake, the woman Nathan's family wanted him to marry. She was draped in an elegant crimson gown, her golden hair tied back in a sleek ponytail, her face flawless. But what stood out the most was the look in her eyes, shock, suspicion, and hurt. Nathan's grip on Emily's hand suddenly tightened, startling her. When she glanced up at him, she realized his gaze was locked onto Samantha. A strange tightness coiled in Emily's chest, something she refused to acknowledge. Why did it feel like she was intruding on something private, like she was just a temporary replacement in someone else's unfinished love story? The weight of the room's attention pressed on her shoulders, but none of it mattered, not when Nathan's gaze lingered on Samantha a second too long. A sense of unease curled around her heart. She was just a pawn in this game, wasn't she? Emily lost track of how many circles they had made around the room, how many hands they had shaken, how many polite smiles they had exchanged. But through it all, Samantha never took her eyes off them. She was waiting, and Emily knew it was only a matter of time before the confrontation came. As Nathan spoke with a business associate, Samantha finally approached them. Her smile was poised and graceful, but her eyes, sharp and unwavering, made Emily feel like she was being examined under a microscope. "Nathan, aren't you going to introduce me to your girlfriend?" Samantha's voice was sweet, yet there was a quiet challenge beneath her words. Nathan didn't hesitate. He tightened his grip on Emily's hand and turned toward Samantha. "This is Emily Taylor. My girlfriend." Emily's heart skipped a beat. My girlfriend. She knew this was coming. They had rehearsed this response. She was prepared. But hearing Nathan say it aloud, in front of Samantha, in front of an entire audience, made it feel dangerously real. Samantha's smile remained, but it no longer held warmth. "Really? That's surprising, because you once told me you didn't believe in love." A few heads turned at Samantha's remark, but Nathan remained unshaken. "Things change, do they?" Samantha took another step forward, her piercing gaze locked onto Emily's. "Then prove it." Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" Samantha tilted her head slightly, her lips curling into something almost predatory. "If you truly love each other, you shouldn't have any problem showing it. A kiss, perhaps." The air grew thick with tension. Emily stiffened instinctively, looking at Nathan. She expected him to react, maybe refuse, maybe dismiss Samantha's challenge. But instead, he calmly set down his glass of wine and turned to her. "What do you think, Em?" His voice was deep, steady, so unnervingly composed that it sent a shiver down her spine. She opened her mouth, but before she could even process what was happening, Nathan had already pulled her into his arms. Then came the kiss, swift, unexpected, and overwhelming. Emily's breath hitched, her entire body freezing as Nathan's lips met hers. The world around them blurred, the murmurs of the crowd fading into a distant hum. This wasn't just a staged act. It was something else, something that sent a pulse of warmth through her veins. Her heart pounded wildly, confusion and something far more dangerous creeping in. Was this still part of the game? Or had the rules already changed? She had no idea how to respond, but her heart betrayed her, effortlessly pounding wildly against her rib cage, as if trying to break free. When Nathan finally pulled away, Emily was still struggling to steady her breath. He turned back to Samantha, his voice calm and unwavering. "Satisfied now?" Samantha pressed her lips together, her hands curling slightly at her sides. But she merely let out a quiet scoff. "Perhaps, but I still don't believe you actually love her." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Emily standing there, her emotions in complete turmoil. She knew this was all an act, a contract, a game. So why did her heart feel like it was playing by different rules? Emily thought that after that night, everything would return to normal, that she and Nathan would continue playing their roles until the contract ended. But she was wrong. Nathan had changed. She wasn't sure when exactly it started. Maybe it was the moment he pulled her into that kiss in front of Samantha. Maybe it was the way he looked at her afterward. Something deeper, something real, something that didn't feel like an act. But the one thing she was sure of was this: Nathan no longer kept his distance from her. Before, when they were alone, Nathan always maintained a professional barrier between them. But now he didn't. Whenever they were in public, his hand would hold hers tighter than necessary. Whenever they walked through a crowd, his arm would settle on her waist, pulling her closer, even when no one was watching. Nathan hadn't changed, not entirely, but something had shifted. Nathan stepped into his office and stood beside her, too close. Emily could feel the warmth of his presence, the steady rhythm of his breath. Frowning, she turned to him. "What are you doing?" Nathan didn't answer. His gaze lingered on her face longer than usual, as if he were trying to figure something out, something even he didn't fully understand. It was strange. He was still Nathan, cold, rational, someone who didn't believe in love, wasn't he? So why did she feel like he actually cared? Samantha, of course, didn't back down so easily. A few days later, she walked into Nathan's office without warning. "We need to talk," she declared, her piercing gaze flickering briefly toward Emily before settling on Nathan. Emily immediately sensed the tension. She was about to excuse herself, but Nathan's hand suddenly caught hers, stopping her from leaving. "I don't think there's anything left to say." "Samantha," Nathan said coolly, his tone sharper than usual. Samantha let out a quiet scoff. "Is that so? Do you really expect me to believe that you love her?" Emily tensed, but she said nothing. This wasn't her battle to fight. Samantha took a step forward, her voice dropping into a taunting whisper. "Nathan Harrington has never believed in love. So why now? Why the sudden change?" She tilted her head, her eyes gleaming with something dangerously sharp. "Is this all just an act?" Emily's heart pounded in her chest. She stole a glance at Nathan, waiting for his reaction. But Nathan didn't flinch. He didn't waver. Instead, he met Samantha's gaze head-on and said, "If this were an act, do you think I'd let you figure it out so easily?" Samantha faltered for a split second, and Emily felt her breath catch in her throat. Because that answer, it wasn't a denial. It wasn't a confirmation either. It was just enough to leave her completely lost in the unknown. And for the first time, she started to wonder, was she still just a part of this act? Or had she become something more? Emily couldn't keep doing this. Ever since the confrontation with Samantha, things between her and Nathan had become unbearably unclear. The way he looked at her, the way he touched her, the way he protected her, was it all just part of their contract, or had it become something more? She needed answers. That evening, Nathan hosted a grand party to announce his company's latest project. Emily played her part flawlessly, smiling, holding his arm, nodding at important guests, but inside, she felt suffocated. Everything inside her was building up, and she knew if she didn't say something now, she never would. So the moment the party ended, she grabbed Nathan's hand and pulled him away from the crowd, leading him to the rooftop where they could be alone. "What are you doing?" Nathan asked, frowning at her urgency. Emily took a deep breath, clenching her fists. "This contract, it has to end." Nathan froze. "What are you talking about?" She lifted her gaze to meet his, her expression uncertain, but her voice unwavering. "I can't keep pretending anymore, Nathan. I've fallen in love with you." Silence. Nathan didn't speak. He didn't react immediately. He just stared at her, his stormy gray eyes reflecting emotions she couldn't decipher. Emily let out a quiet laugh, though it was filled with sorrow. But I don't know if anything you've done was ever real. She exhaled shakily. If this was all just a game to you, then I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. She turned to leave, but before she could take a step, a firm hand wrapped around her wrist, stopping her in place. Wait, Nathan said, his voice lower than she'd ever heard it. Emily clenched her hands into fists, refusing to look at him. Let me go, Nathan. No. She bit her lip, her eyes stinging. Why? Nathan's jaw tightened. She could see him fighting with himself. Then, after a long pause, he let out a small, bitter laugh. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. Damn it, Em. He looked away for a moment, as if battling something within himself. Within himself, he fought back emotions. But when Nathan finally met her gaze again, his voice was quieter, almost vulnerable. I never thought I would love anyone. His fingers curled into fists. When I made this proposal, it was just a plan. A contract. A game with an expiration date. He let out a quiet laugh, shaking his head. But there was one thing I didn't plan for. I didn't plan to fall in love with you. Emily stood frozen. Her heart pounded in her chest. But this time, it wasn't from confusion or doubt. It was from the weight of Nathan's words, shaking her to the core. He had fallen in love with her. She searched his eyes, looking for any trace of deception. There was none. No more barriers. No more contracts. No more necessary lies to keep up the act. Only truth. Nathan slowly lifted his hand, his fingers brushing against her cheek as he murmured, I love you, Emily. And this time, there's no contract. She didn't know who moved first, but in the next moment, their lips met. Gone were the staged kisses. Gone were the watching eyes. It was just them, and the love they had finally admitted. Emily walked down a flower-lined path in the gardens of the Harrington estate, her heart racing as she saw Nathan waiting at the end of the aisle, dressed in a sharp black suit. He was no longer the cold, untouchable CEO he used to be. He was a man who had chosen love over strategy. As she reached him, Nathan took her hand firmly in his, leaning in to whisper, I told you I was never going to let you go. Emily smiled, whispering back, and I never wanted to leave. As they exchanged their vows, Nathan leaned in close, his breath warm against her ear as he murmured, I love you. And this time, there was no contract, no pretense, only real love. A year after their wedding, life for Emily and Nathan was still filled with happiness, but in a way neither of them had expected. Emily never thought that the cold, arrogant Nathan Harrington could turn into such a thoughtful husband. But he proved her wrong. Every morning, Nathan was the first to wake up. But instead of diving straight into work, he would take a few moments to simply watch his wife sleep, sometimes brushing a stray curl from her face. On lazy weekend mornings, he would bring her coffee in bed, occasionally even making breakfast just to see her sleepy smile. Of course, not everything was perfect. Nathan was still a strong-willed CEO, and Emily had never been one to back down from an argument. But instead of tense battles like before, their disagreements now ended with a kiss, a sincere apology, or a tight embrace. One breezy afternoon, as Emily watered the plants in their small garden, Nathan approached her from behind, wrapping his arms around her waist. You're going to overwater that, he murmured against her ear, a teasing smirk playing on his lips. Emily rolled her eyes, but couldn't hide her smile. Before she could respond, Nathan slipped something into her hand, a small, delicate bracelet with their initials engraved inside. Just because, he said simply, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. "What are you doing?" she laughed, leaning back against him. He lowered his head, murmuring again, "Just felt like holding my wife for a moment." Emily smiled, her heart full. They had come such a long way, from a fabricated contract to a love that was undeniably real. And now, she knew she was standing beside the man who would love her for a lifetime.